like to tell us about your involvement here today?
Yes, I've been asked to be part of the inaugural joint International Women's Day between the Jack Jumpers and the Tasmanian Devils. So I was pleased to get the invitation, and I love Tasmania, so I was happy to come down.
What, I guess, will you sort of be talking about today?
Well, it's a wide-ranging conversation. As I understand, Brendan Gale and I are part of a panel, and we'll talk a bit about our leadership and what happened at Richmond when we were both there, and then some commentary on the wider range of diversity and inclusion efforts across business and sport.
I guess just on that, obviously being one of the first, woman president in the AFL, how have you sort of seen the space change? What needs to happen, I guess, to make it more inclusive for women in sport?
Well, I think there are two aspects. There's participation of women in sport, and I think the advent of the AFLW has helped that. But then there's the leadership side as well, about who's the coach, who are the CEOs, who are on boards and presidents and things like that. And I think we still have a long way to go on that. Participation has increased, and it's great to see so many girls and young women taking part in that great sport. But I think we still need to have opportunities open up to run the business side of sport. And I think it's not just AFL, it's really all sport. And I think the talent's there. It's just being sure that we nurture it and that we make sport an attractive place to have a career.
How pleasing has it been for you to see women hold such big and significant roles within sporting clubs at the moment? And not only that, but to go on and have success, Christine at the Jack Jumpers, yourself at Richmond and whatnot too.
Well, I think it shows that you don't. When I first became president of Richmond, it was sort of a novelty. It's like, oh, well, what's she got? What's she bring? How's it going to make a difference? But I think that it shows that women can take on all these jobs. The talent's there, and unless you include that talent, you're really missing out on a lot of progress, I suppose, and a lot of new ideas and a lot of different ways of doing things. So I think it's wonderful that women have some of those roles, but as long as we can still keep counting how many women and how many big roles, there are not enough women.
Peggy, can you talk us through some of the obstacles that you faced when you were in a leadership role as a female?
Well, I think that obstacles might have been just being the first and really trying to understand what that role involved. I'd been on the board at Richmond for quite a while, and it was all men and me, and those men asked me to become president. So I must say Richmond's been progressive for a very long time. I was the first woman on the board, and the men asked me to join. That was 2005, and then in 2013 I became president. So I think that part of it was trying to understand the outside perception beyond the club, because the club obviously had confidence in me, but I wasn't known in the wider football community, so it was rocky those first couple of years, especially when, as Richmond, we were trying to find our feet at the same time. So I think I had to find sort of new reservoirs of resilience to just keep going. But I had a great team, and I worked with Brendan Gale was already CEO, and I'd been on the committee that hired Brendan back in 2009, so I sort of knew him. But I think as a team we had a lot of talented people, and together we found a way through. So I don't think it wasn't just me, but it was having those great people that I could learn from and rely on.
What do you know about the way Tasmanian women are flying the flag throughout the nation?
I don't know.
Well, Tasmanian women, there's a lot of key women or women in key spots, and would you be encouraging others to step up and show their talents, the talents you spoke about?
Well, I think so. People have different sort of aspirations in life, but I think if you aspire to any role, that one, it ought to be seriously open to women to do that. But I think also that women ought to support other women, and we can't all just be the women solving the women in senior leadership roles. I think we also have to say that men have to help with that as well. So no, I would encourage everyone to, if that's what they aspire to give it a go.
Do you think what you and others have been able to achieve has set the platform for a team like the Devils, a start-up club, to go ahead and employ women in such important roles going forward?
I would hope so. I'd hope so. I think that it shows that talent should be identified everywhere. If things were truly done on merit, it would have been 50-50 a long time ago. There are certain roles that attract a certain type of people, things that you want to do and other people might not want to do. But as far as sports concerned, I think there's a great interest in sport, women's sport and men's sport. And I think that when we get as many women working in men's sport as men working in women's sport, then we will have really achieved equality. And that hasn't happened yet.
You spent a lot of time in footy, obviously. How far away are we from a first, woman coach and those sorts of roles as well?
Well, the pathways are opening up, and I think that there's a real effort to sort of accelerate some of that progress. I'd like to think we're not too far away. I think we've got some really great development going on, and including programs where up-and-coming women who want to be coaches are working in the men's game and vice versa. So I think that we're not too far away from seeing that. I hope so.
Peggy, we know you're from the States and you've had this amazing career. Was there a moment in your career that you really thought, is the highlight for you?
No, I've done some wonderful things. I've worked with some great people. Being at Richmond when we won a grand final after 37 years, I wasn't there for the whole 37 years, but I was there long enough to know what it meant to people, and I still get stopped because it just brought such happiness, and I have a real appreciation now of the breadth of the Tiger Army. I've been overseas and had people stop me and say, oh, I was there in 2019, I was there in 2017. So that was a highlight. But one of the things I've always been interested in is education, and now I'm chancellor of a university, which I never saw coming. And while that has its own issues, and we know it's a lot of political commentary on that right now, it means a great deal to me because what education meant to me and to my family. I'm a first-in-family graduate and going to university, and so that's something. Then I'm working on some things with housing for women who are in dire circumstances, domestic violence. So there's so many good causes out there. It's hard to pick one or another, but my love of sport and my love of Richmond, that's pretty close to the top, I would say.
And if there are some young girls, watching the news tonight, aspiring to have a role in sport, what's your advice to those girls?
Find a way to do it. I think that you find something that you love, and that's what you'll invest that extra effort into. And if it's sport, there are going to be opportunities that open up, and be alive to when those doors open, and just walk through.
You mentioned Brendan, and he's now CEO of the Devils. What do you think will make him a good CEO for the Tasmanian team?
Well, I think the same things that made him a good CEO for Richmond in all those years I worked with him. He can identify great people to bring in. He is someone who appreciates lots of types of people. He played football. He's been part of a team that had great success and then teams that didn't quite achieve that. He knows how to put things together and the patience to make it happen. And besides that, he's a person of high values, and he loves Tasmania. So I think the emotion that brought him back to Richmond is the same kind of emotion that's brought him to Tasmania.
Well, as part of the panel that appointed him, obviously the answer is almost the questions are almost self-answering, but did he vindicate your decision to installing a CEO?
I think he did. There were times along the way where I thought that he might be so stressed out that he didn't last the course, but no, he did. All along, he just persevered because it meant a lot to him, and I think that's the emotional connection. It was about more than just a job.
How was it sharing that moment in the grandstands in the 2017 when it was clear the Tigers were going to get over the line?
Well, somewhere in the start of the fourth quarter, I was saying we've won, and he said, "Don't jinx it, and I kept saying we were going to win, and he had to admit that I was right.
And if you had one strongest asset, or characteristic, what would that be?
Of his?
Yeah.
Oh, I think just he is a person of great judgment.
Does he still have you on speed dial for council in his new role?
No, he's called a couple of times, but he's only been in the role a few weeks now. We had a nice farewell for him, and so I'm looking forward to seeing him again. It's been a while. Gone from seeing him every day to now it's in a different state and a different circumstance. But he has not called me for advice, and I'm not so sure I could give him advice.
What about your impressions of the Jack Jumpers? Have you heard much, and also your I suppose view of the success of an expansion club so quickly in the club's infancy?
Well, I think everybody was surprised that it came out of the block so quickly, 3 years ago? And last year's final series was just so exciting. So I haven't been to see a game live, but I'm looking forward to doing that.
Perfect. Well, I'll start off with the lunch today. We just spoke to Lauren. What are you hoping that people will take away from hearing you guys speak?
Look, I think it's a different slant we're putting on International Women's Day. I've obviously done a fair bit of speaking this week and speaking to a lot of women about the plight that we have in trying to find some gender equality. And I think today was really important because we've got men in the room talking with us and standing with us as women, and I think that message is really important, and women need to stop talking to women and we need to start talking to men, and if we have to put men on the stage to attract men into the audience, then we will do that.
How do you foster and nurture those females in leadership roles?
Well, you put good people around them, both men and women, and today I'll be with Scott Roth and Brendan Gale will be joining Peggy, and both really great men that really support women, and we need more of that, and we've asked Scott and Brendan to be there to really spread the word about how diversity is so good for business.
Does it sit to have Peggy here too? She's got obviously a massive career. It would be a great help, for all sporting codes in Tassie.
People like Peggy are incredibly inspirational to people like me. We need to see more of Peggy and the Peggys of the world, and I actually haven't met her yet, and I'm very, very excited to do so in a minute.
You mentioned it before about what sort of you feel like needs to change in terms of it's more like the conversations with men. I guess can you expand on that and some of the challenges that you sort of faced in your time?
I can only talk through my own lens, and that is through the industry, that is sport. And at the moment, when we look at AFL, NRL and NBL, for example, there are 45 teams that compete in the men's competition and 2 female CEOs in that. That is not a good enough statistic, and it's up to us to do our bit to make sure that we see more of these women doing these roles in the future.
From your own personal experience, is there any obstacles that you faced as a woman, getting to that leadership position you have now?
Absolutely, it's an unconscious bias. I believe over the years it hasn't been conscious, but there's too much education out there now, there's too much knowledge and there's too much data for us to hide behind unconscious bias. It now needs to be called out as a conscious bias, and we need to start making inroads into gender equality.
And also I asked everyone else this question, but if there are young, girls at home hoping for a leadership role in sport or just a position in sport, do you have any advice for those girls?
Go for it, do it, and people like me will make sure that we're working really, really hard to pave the way for you to have a career all the way through right into the CEO if that's what you choose to do.
We'll just pivot to the JJs for a second. What's coming over the next few weeks, few months for the Jack Jumpers in terms of preparing for next season?
Yeah, my focus at the moment is very much on the WNBL, and I've submitted a request to the NBL for a licence, and I'm very much hoping that'll come through in the next couple of weeks. Scott's focus, and of course our basketball department are very much focusing on the recruitment for next season, and there's a lot of work being done in that space. There's a lot of interest in our club at the moment, so we're really working with that and making sure that we've got a great team that'll take the court next season.
So that's free agency you're talking about, he's working through?
Free agency will commence at the end of the NBL Finals series, but we're certainly having internal conversations about who we'll target. We know we've got a very, very clear strategy ahead, and I'm sure that the players would want to come and play under Scott Roth, so we're going to do our best to attract the very best talent to Tasmania.
What about in terms of the imports? We've had a couple of really good ones. What's the future for the imports in terms of?
You're right, we've had some great imports that have been great contributors to our club, and if every one of them could be an Australian citizen, I can tell you they would be. We always leave the imports to the last. The important thing is that we get our roster of Australians right first, and then we fill the imports, and that really is the end of the recruitment cycle, so we'll look at that once we've solved all our Australian places.
Have you secured the government support that you needed for the WNBL licence?
The government have certainly indicated to me that should we be awarded a licence, they would absolutely support that bid, and we haven't worked through any kind of detail around that at the moment, but they're certainly showing a lot of support.
How exciting would that be to actually get a tick for the licence?
It'll be amazing, and I've just come back from an International Women's Day talk in Devonport, and there's certainly a buzz in the northwest of the state around the potential of having women's games played in the north of the state and the northwest of the state, and this women's team is going to be crucial to really rounding out the work that Jack Jumper's doing across Tasmania.
Do you have any involvement in the Silver Dome and the development there?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's $12 million that's been promised to the upgrade of that. It's obviously a multi-purpose stadium, but the Jack Jumpers will absolutely benefit from that. And we're working with Stadiums Tas at the moment through what that looks like, and certainly improving the spectator experience is our number one priority, as well as providing a corporate experience, and obviously fixing up all of those things that the opposition teams haven't enjoyed about the Silver Dome.
Do you have a D-Day in terms of the licence when you'll know if you're in or out?
I'm hoping that we know by mid-March, but that is completely out of my hands. But I'm very much hoping by mid-March we'll have an indication whether we're going to have a team in 26, 27.
I suppose on International Women's Day, how important is it for the club and under new ownership to have that WNBL and to have those players inspiring the next generation?
Our new owners have been very, very clear with me that the WNBL is their highest priority right now, and I've been working closely with them to make sure they're supporting my bid. And as late as yesterday, I had a very long conversation with our new owner, the Outdoor Capital Group. I gave them an update of it. They're very, very happy with where it's at, and they're also supporting it at the level by talking to the ownership group of Larry Kesselman and Robin Denholm.
Are there any milestones coming up in terms of the owners and their involvement or their engagement with the club?
Yeah, they're going to start making their way to Tassie fairly regularly, and starting at the end of March, they'll start working with me on the strategy moving forward. We'll obviously have a look at the structure of our business, and hopefully by the time they get here, we'll be talking about an expansion to our front office to cater for a WNBL team, and certainly I've got my fingers crossed that will happen.
Will there be many changes to the club? Do the fans have to take a deep breath and wonder what might be coming?
I think every year we strive for continuous improvement, and this year is no exception. I have to say I'm feeling a great deal of excitement about what's ahead at the moment. I think there's some great things to come in both our men's and our women's programs. So all I can say to our supporters is watch this space, because there's great things coming your way.